There's a quiet lie sitting at the center of retirement planning. It doesn't scream. It usually shows up dressed like responsibility, caution, even wisdom. But once you see it clearly, you won't be able to unsee how quietly it steals peace from people who may already be safer than they think. Before we continue, if you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, this would be a really good time to do it. I've got a lot more of these waiting for you. The real question isn't how big your retirement account is. It's whether your income can support your life without turning every month into a stress test. Most people walk into retirement focused on account balances. They look at their 401k, their IRA, their savings, and they ask, is this enough? And if the number doesn't feel big enough, they feel behind, even if they have something incredibly valuable sitting right in front of them. The goal of retirement is not wealth, it's income. That sounds simple, but here's the thing. A lot of people have been trained to stare at the furniture and ignore the foundation. Think about a house for a second. The furniture is what you notice. The couch, the table, the nice lamp in the corner. That's how savings feels. It's visible. It's easy to show people. It's easy to compare. But the foundation is what holds the whole thing up. Strong, underground, invisible, but holding everything up. Your income floor is that foundation. Social Security, pensions, stable income that keeps arriving month after month. Your savings are more like the furniture. Nice to have. Important, yes, but they sit on top of something else. And that invisible part, that income floor, is where so many people are stronger than they realize. Here's the thing. Most people are being told they are behind when they're not. They are looking at a number on a screen and missing the invisible asset underneath it. I want you to picture your retirement in two piles. Not one giant, scary pile. Two. Pile one is income that shows up no matter what. Social Security, a pension, maybe rental income. Money that keeps coming whether the market feels cheerful or angry. Pile two is your savings, your IRA, your 401k, your brokerage account, your cash reserves. Now here's the critical mistake most people make. They focus almost entirely on pile two while barely acknowledging pile one. And yet pile one is often doing far more heavy lifting than people realize. Let that sink in. Because if pile one already covers a big part of your life, then pile two does not have to carry the whole weight of retirement. It only has to cover the gap. And that is a completely different conversation from the one most people are having. Let's meet two people. The first one, let's call him Frank. Frank is 67. He spent over 3 decades working a steady, dependable job. Nothing flashy, no big windfalls, just consistency. If you saw him walking down the street, you wouldn't think, there goes someone financially secure. You might actually think the opposite. Frank lives in a modest home. He drives an older car. And if you looked strictly at his savings, you'd probably panic for him, because Frank has around $140,000 saved. By the standards you've been taught, Frank is behind. But here's what you don't see when you only look at that number. Frank has a monthly pension. He has Social Security income. His home is fully paid off. Every single month, without touching his savings, money shows up consistently, predictably. Frank is not struggling. Frank is not stressed. Frank is living a life that works. Now let's meet Gary. Gary did everything right, at least according to the rules he was given. He saved aggressively. He invested diligently. He followed the benchmarks. And today, Gary has $800,000 saved. On paper, Gary is a success story, but Gary doesn't feel like one. Gary still has a mortgage. Gary doesn't have a pension. Gary relies heavily on his investment account to fund his life. Every market fluctuation feels personal. Gary has more money than Frank, but less peace. It's not about who has more saved, it's about who has more certainty. And that line right there changes everything. Because what Frank has is not just income. He has confidence. He has predictability. He has a floor under his feet. Gary has more visible wealth, but his plan is exposed to more silent pressure. A bad market early in retirement quietly erodes his confidence. Inflation slowly raises the cost of everything around him. A surprise home repair nudges him off balance. Healthcare costs creep, taxes creep, insurance creeps. And because so much of Gary's life depends on withdrawing money from accounts that rise and fall, every headline feels louder than it should. I want to know, have you ever felt like you were doing everything right but still felt behind? You are not alone. Now listen, this is where pensions get misunderstood. A pension can feel boring. It can feel old-fashioned. It can feel less exciting than a giant portfolio. But boring is not bad when your bills show up every month. A pension is like having part of your future already pre-built. It's like walking into winter with wood already stacked by the door. You may not talk about it much. Other people may not brag about it. But when the temperature drops, you are the one sleeping warm. You may already have what people with millions are searching for. That is not an exaggeration. People with very large portfolios are often searching for exactly what a pension provides: stable income, predictable income, income they do not have to create from scratch every month by deciding what to sell and when to sell it. And if you want to understand why this matters so much, think about Social Security like a faucet. Behind that faucet is a pipe, one you've been filling your entire working life. Every paycheck, every tax contribution, it all builds pressure in that pipe. Now here's how it works. The longer you wait to turn the faucet on, the stronger the pressure becomes. Wait until 70, the flow is stronger. Turn it on at 62, the flow is lighter. But here's the part most people don't think about. That faucet belongs to you. You paid into it. And if you wait too long to turn it on, some of that water never reaches you. It just stays in the pipe, unused, gone. That doesn't mean taking it early is always right. It doesn't mean waiting is always right either. The question isn't what's the best age, it's what's the best decision for your life right now. Because the simple version people repeat is often too simple. Yes, if your full retirement age is 67, starting at 62 means accepting a lower monthly benefit. Waiting can increase that monthly amount up to age 70. That part is true. But what often gets quietly erased from the conversation is the human part. Your health, your spouse, your need for income now, your family history, your work plans, your stress level, your other sources of guaranteed income. A clean formula can be comforting, but real life is rarely clean. There was even a time when people leaned heavily on break-even style thinking, trying to reduce the whole choice down to a neat math line. But that kind of thinking leaves out the personal factors that matter most. It leaves out life expectancy, health, timing, real needs, real trade-offs. In other words, it leaves out you. And that's why retirement planning can feel so frustrating. People want a rule. They want a perfect age. They want someone to hand them the right answer. But here's what you need to know. Retirement decisions are not about winning a spreadsheet. They're about building a life you can actually live. What do you think? Are most people actually behind on retirement, or are they just measuring it wrong? Let's go back to this idea of the retirement sticker price, because this is where a lot of fear gets planted. Imagine walking onto a car lot. Every vehicle has a sticker price. Bold, official, intimidating. It looks final. It looks non-negotiable. But if you've ever bought a car, you already know the truth. Nobody pays the sticker. There are hidden discounts, dealer incentives, timing advantages, negotiation room. The real price is almost always lower. But the sticker exists to anchor your expectations, to make you feel like anything below it is a win, even if you're still overpaying. Now take that exact same system and apply it to retirement. That giant number people throw around, the one that makes you feel like you're not even close, that's your sticker price. It's not your life. It's not your plan. It's not your gap. It's a broad estimate based on broad assumptions, and those assumptions often have very little to do with you. If you have a pension, that sticker price may be wildly misleading for your situation, because those generic numbers often assume you are building your own paycheck from savings. They quietly assume your investments are doing most of the work. But if part of your monthly life is already being covered by a pension, then the number your savings need to reach may be far lower than the sticker suggests. You are not behind. In fact, you may already be standing on one of the strongest financial foundations available today. Now, does that mean you can ignore inflation? No. Inflation is the silent eroder. It doesn't slam the door. It quietly chips away. Groceries get a little more expensive. Property taxes nudge up. Insurance quietly rises. Travel costs creep. Medical bills don't ask permission. They just show up. And over a long retirement, even small increases, invisibly, steadily, can become big pressure. That matters for pensions too. Some pensions stay flat, some have adjustments, Social Security has cost of living adjustments, often called COLAs, which means benefits can rise over time as prices rise. That helps. But here's where it gets real. Help is not the same as full protection. A COLA is useful, but it doesn't mean every cost in your life moves in perfect sync with your benefit. Healthcare can rise faster. Housing can rise faster. Your personal inflation may not look like the average inflation number. So yes, guaranteed income matters. But realism matters too. It's not pessimism, it's realism. And in this case, realism isn't negative. It's empowering. Because once you stop pretending inflation doesn't exist, you can actually plan for it. You can build breathing room. You can adjust early instead of reacting late. Think about it like a boat tied to a dock. If the tide quietly rises and you never check the rope, what once felt secure can slowly tighten into strain. That's inflation. Not dramatic every day, just steady, quiet, relentless. Which is why someone with a pension should not just feel grateful. You should also be thoughtful. How much of your expenses does that pension cover now? How much might it cover later? Does it rise? Does it stay flat? Does your Social Security help offset some of that erosion? Those are the questions that matter. And speaking of expenses, most people underestimate them by a lot. Not because they're careless, because retirement spending is sneaky. You imagine life slowing down, and in some ways it does. But then other things show up. You help a grandchild, you take a trip, you replace a roof, you need dental work, you start saying yes to things because you finally have time, or you spend more on convenience because your energy is not what it used to be. Retirement is not always cheaper. Sometimes it's just different. Let me ask you something. Do you know what your monthly income will actually look like when you retire? Be honest with yourself. This is why the income floor matters so much. If your pension and Social Security cover the basics, then surprises are annoying, not catastrophic. But if your whole plan depends on pulling from investments, then surprises can silently erode more than money. They quietly erode peace. And that brings us to one of the biggest risks retirees face, even people with good savings: sequence of returns risk. I know that sounds like jargon, so let me make it simple. Picture two people carrying water down a hill in identical buckets, same bucket size, same amount of water. But one person hits the bumps early and the other hits them later. The one who hits the bumps early spills more before reaching the bottom. That's sequence of returns risk. It means the order of market returns matters, especially when you're withdrawing money at the same time. A bad stretch early in retirement can do more damage than a bad stretch later, because you're pulling from a shrinking account while it has less time to recover. That is exactly why guaranteed income matters so much. A pension reduces the amount you need to pull from your portfolio. Social Security does the same. The stronger your income floor, the less water you spill when the road gets rough. Frank may not know the term sequence of returns risk, but his life is protected from it more than Gary's is. That is what people miss. They see Gary's bigger bucket. They don't see Frank's smoother road. Here's a question. If you had to choose between more money or more certainty, which would it be? Keep that in your head as we go. Now let's talk about spouses, because this is one of those subjects people quietly avoid until life forces the conversation. Think of retirement income like a table with legs. One leg might be your pension, one might be your Social Security, one might be your spouse's benefit, one might be savings. If one leg disappears, does the table still stand? That is not a fun question, but it is a necessary one. If you're married, your Social Security choice is not just about your check. It's also about what may be left for the person you love if you're gone first. Survivor benefits matter, and a surviving spouse can often step into a higher benefit based on the other spouse's record, depending on the situation. That means delaying a benefit can sometimes be less about you and more about protecting your spouse later. For some couples, that makes waiting more valuable. For others, current needs matter more, and taking it earlier makes sense. Again, the question isn't what's the best age, it's what's the best decision for your life right now. And if you have a pension, there's another layer. Does it continue for your spouse? Does it reduce after one spouse dies? Did you choose a survivor option? If so, how much does it pay? These are not small details. These are the hidden hinges your whole plan may swing on. Here's a question for the married folks. Have you and your spouse ever actually talked about what happens if one of you is gone? Because a lot of couples have not. Not really. They've talked about retirement in the broad sense, travel, timing, maybe where they'll live. But they haven't walked through the quiet fear underneath it. What changes if one income disappears? What stays? What shrinks? What bills keep coming? What choices would the surviving spouse have to make while also grieving? This is why I keep coming back to certainty. Certainty is not exciting. It doesn't make flashy headlines, but it changes how you sleep at night. It changes how you spend. It changes whether you open your statements with dread or with calm. Numbers matter, but how you feel about those numbers, that matters just as much. Now let's talk about pensions in real dollar terms, because this is another place where people miss the value of what they already have. If your pension pays, say, a couple $1,000s a month for life, that is not just monthly cash flow. It is the job your portfolio no longer has to do. It is income you do not have to manufacture. Income you do not have to manage into existence. Income you do not have to wonder about every time the market drops. That makes your pension more than a paycheck. It makes it a pressure reducer. And pressure reduction is not nothing. The silent pressure of retirement planning can wear people down for years before they even stop working. It quietly erodes joy in the present because they're so focused on some giant target in the future. Stop measuring yourself against everyone else. Stop feeling behind and start focusing on what truly gives you freedom. Freedom is not a giant number by itself. Freedom is knowing the bills get paid. Freedom is groceries without stress. Freedom is saying yes to lunch with a friend without guilt. Freedom is not flinching every time the market has a bad week. Here's something to think about. If you found out today that you're actually on track, how would that change your week? Would you breathe differently, sleep differently, talk to your spouse differently? Would you stop carrying that quiet fear around like a backpack full of bricks? Because that's what this channel is really about. Not fantasy, not hype, clarity. And clarity starts by seeing the difference between income and assets. If I hand you a beautiful grand piano but no floor beneath it, you don't feel secure, it may be expensive, it may impress people, but it does not solve the structural problem. That's what a large portfolio without enough income can feel like. Valuable? Yes. Useful? Yes. But emotionally unstable if it has to do all the work. On the other hand, if the floor is solid, even modest furniture feels comfortable. That's what a pension does. That's what Social Security does. That's why someone with a so-called average retirement account can quietly be in better shape than someone with a much larger balance. It's not about who has more saved, it's about who has more certainty. And certainty does not mean zero risk. It means fewer moving parts, fewer decisions under pressure, fewer moments where fear gets to drive. Now listen, I don't want to turn this into a fairy tale. A pension is not magic. If your spending is too high, a pension alone may not solve that. If your pension doesn't keep up with inflation, you still need a plan. If you retire too early with a big gap between income and expenses, you still have work to do. But this idea that having a pension somehow doesn't count because it doesn't show up as a giant account balance, that's the quiet lie. It counts. It counts a lot. It may be one of the most valuable things you have. You don't need perfection to have a successful retirement. You need clarity. And clarity means getting specific. Not vague, not emotional, not benchmark-driven. Specific. Here's what I want you to do. Start by figuring out your income floor. What money is coming in every month no matter what? Social Security, pensions, anything stable and predictable. That number matters more than you've been told. Then look at your real expenses. Not based on your old salary. Not based on what you think retirement should cost. Look at your actual life. Housing, food, utilities, transportation, healthcare, the small things that quietly add up, the bigger things you know you care about. Because retirement isn't about replacing income. It's about supporting your lifestyle. And once you have those two numbers, find the gap. What's the difference between what comes in and what goes out? That gap is what your savings need to cover, not some generic giant benchmark, not the sticker price, just the gap. Then give that gap some breathing room. Build a buffer, not just a target, because life has a way of nudging costs upward when you least expect it. A car repair, a higher insurance bill, a medical issue, a child who needs help. Don't aim for just enough. Aim for enough plus room to breathe. And while you're doing this, look closely at your claiming choices. If you're deciding when to take Social Security, don't ask the internet for a magical universal age. Ask better questions. Do you need the income now? Are you in good health? Are you married? Would a higher benefit protect your spouse later? Do you have a pension already covering much of your core spending? The better the questions, the better the decision. Quick check. Do you know your full retirement age for Social Security? Most people don't. And that's not a criticism. That's a reminder. So many retirement choices get made based on half-heard advice from friends, headlines, or a viral chart that looks smart but leaves out the human side. You deserve better than that. You deserve a plan built around your life. Take this home with you. Get clear on your income. Get honest about your spending. Respect inflation instead of ignoring it. Protect your spouse by having the uncomfortable conversation now, not later. And stop treating your pension like background noise. It is not background noise. It is part of your financial backbone. You may already be standing on stronger ground than you think. If the system only rewards you with almost enough, you will spend your entire life chasing more. But if you understand your numbers, if you build your income, if you define your life on your terms, you don't chase anymore. You decide. And that's the shift from fear to clarity, from chasing to choosing, from not enough to enough. Retirement isn't the end of something. It's the beginning of something new. A new rhythm, a new pace, a new way of living. And the goal isn't just to survive it. The goal is to enjoy it, to wake up without financial stress, to make decisions without fear, to live with confidence, not hesitation. If you have a pension, do not let anyone make you feel small because your account balance doesn't impress them. That pension may be doing more for your future than a bigger account does for someone else. That pension may be the invisible asset people overlook. That pension may be the reason you get to live with more calm, more confidence, and more certainty than people who look richer on paper. And if that describes you, then hear this clearly. You are not behind, you are not failing, you are not missing the game. You may already have what people with millions are searching for. If this video made you think differently about your retirement, subscribe. The next one goes even deeper.